The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. You know, we call it Breath of the Wild 2 because obviously it is the direct sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. A video game that many people, myself included, found to be very awesome, and currently, right now, it is my favorite Legend of Zelda game. While it is my favorite Zelda game, and I thought the game was amazing, it still had issues. And since The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 is a direct sequel, you would think that these issues would be addressed and fixed in this game. And for me, there is one big issue that I hope does get fixed in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. While some people have problems with the weather, you know, sliding off a surface as you climbed it if it rained, and a lot of people did have problems with the weapon breaking system. But personally, the main thing that I want them to fix in Breath of the Wild 2 from Breath of the Wild are the bosses, especially the final boss. Hey guys, HMK here with another Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 video. We have a lot of stuff to talk about when it comes to the sequel and the base game, which was wild, Breath of the Wild. But you know what wasn't that wild? The bosses, they weren't really that Breath of the Wild. But let's break down on how they could be better. And to that end, for the safety of hype, I'm gonna ask you to strap on in. We got a chunk to go over, so let's dive directly into the noise. So honestly, one of my main issues with the original Breath of the Wild that I hope not to see in the sequel are the dungeon bosses. Aside from the Yiga Master Koga, which was pretty alright, all of the bosses in Breath of the Wild, or I should say the base game, were a form of Ganon, or the Calamity Ganon, with each divine beast having its own elemental Ganon in the form of Water Blight, Thunder Blight, Fire Blight, and Wind Blight, with the final boss being a two-parter Calamity Ganon and Dark Beast Ganon. I had quite a couple of issues when it comes to these bosses. Now, I'm not gonna lie, they looked cool, but after the second Blight Ganon, they looked a little too samey to me. Well, of course, because they all are an offshoot of Ganon, but aside from the elements, I would have liked a little bit more variety for my taste. That can be solved easily in Breath of the Wild with having each boss its own boss and have its own identity, kind of like the Zelda games of yore. It's due to the similarity in design is that other than their own elemental tells that gave you an idea how to deal with them in combat, they were all a form of Ganon and you kind of had to deal with them the same way, especially since all of them are based on Guardian technology. And even then, all of these Blight Ganons were pretty easy except for one. We all know who we're talking about, the true final boss of the game. But that still wasn't enough to pull me over. And now we come to Calamity Ganon and Dark Beast Ganon. Now, I'm not gonna lie, Calamity Ganon's design was awesome. It looked like he can walk the walk, and he talked the talk, but he couldn't walk the walk.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology. But I don't want to spend a lot of money.
Because, you know, aside from the fact that if you found all 4 divine beasts and freed them, you cut this boss's HP in half, and if you have the Master Sword in tow, this Calamity Ganon is not that much of a calamity, and he was just a huge pushover in my opinion. Really makes me remember the days of Twilight Princess. But despite that, Calamity Ganon was still a fight. It was still a boss fight. You took out your weapons, you had to figure out how to take them down, which you do, and then you're off to another round with old Ganon. And this time you have to fight Dark Beast Ganon, which is a huge, malice-infested version of what we know as the true Beast Ganon. And I can tell you right now, first seeing this thing that we have to fight this giant monstrosity in the open area of Hyrule, I got super pumped and super hyped after thinking that, you know, that Calamity Ganon boss that I just fought wasn't too hard, so maybe this is the true bad boy. And then we got what we got, which was a arrow shoot 'em up minigame in which we took him down in like 8 shots. Whoopee. I do not want Calamity Ganondorf to turn out like this in Breath of the Wild 2, and I hope that Nintendo hears the complaints loud and clear, because I'm pretty sure this is a shared thought. Although there are some people that believe that Dark Beast Ganon was more of a homestretch boss than anything else. No, that's not really a good argument. Don't make the final boss a homestretch boss, and homestretch bosses aren't even that great. And honestly, that's my biggest fear, that Ganondorf, or whoever the final boss is for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, is gonna end up just like that.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology. But I don't want to spend a lot of money.
But at the same time, what gives me hope is that in the DLC of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, more specifically the Champion's Ballad, we were treated to another final quote-unquote boss. And this boss was Maz Koshia. And I gotta tell you guys, right now, this is the true final boss of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Maz Koshia was very intimidating, had different phases, and actually felt like a boss you actually had to deal with. And the fact that this boss is more humanoid than anything else, it really does give me hope for another humanoid-like boss to be in the sequel, Ganondorf. All Nintendo has to do is take the general intimidating factor of Maz Koshia, not replicate the entire boss fight T to T, but that's the type of energy that I want to mess with in terms of a final boss in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. But not only just that, all the other bosses in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 need to be different. They can't really follow the same theme too hard, just like the bosses did in Breath of the Wild 1. Because after the first Blight Ganon, and then you go into the second boss, and then you're thinking, okay, what's it gonna be? Is it gonna be a different form of Ganon? Is it gonna be this? Is it gonna be that? Nah, it's just, yeah, another Blight Ganon, okay. I kinda already have an idea how to beat this thing, so let me do that. Keeping the boss ideas fresh and always expecting something different gives for more innovative gameplay designs and challenges. And for me, that's one of the biggest kinks in the armor of Breath of the Wild, is just that each boss felt like a regurgitation of the other. So let's skip that this time around, shall we? And also, I like to go back and talk a little bit more about Dark Beast Ganon and the concept of huge bosses in a Breath of the Wild style game. That boss and any other boss that tries to emulate it or follow through with that can be done so much better than what we saw in the original Breath of the Wild. You know, especially since we're getting the hint of something big, you know, with the castle rising up at the end of the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer. I've always had this concept in my head on how Dark Beast Ganon could have been done so much better than what we got in the original game. Especially since it will make great use of climbing, which was a huge thing in the original Breath of the Wild. So you know how you had to fire the arrows of light onto Dark Beast Ganon in order to do damage on him at certain points? So instead of those points doing insane damage, what could have been done is that when these points flare up and then you hit all of them with the arrows of light, it freezes up Dark Beast Ganon and clears him and purifies him of his malice for a short time, because malice does hurt you. And when that happens, Link will be able to get off the horse and climb on Dark Beast Ganon in this state. Given his size, it would have been a very interesting angle on this boss fight. As you are climbing and trying to get to the top of Dark Beast Ganon, cracks of malice will still be able to seep through him, and this will produce enemies that would get in your way. Deciding on how to fight them to get past them will be up to you, and you're trying to get to the top of Calamity Ganon's back where the eye will be opened up. And once you reach the eye, then you strike it with the Master Sword, which we didn't even use in the final boss fight, for God's sakes. And then when you do enough strikes on the eye, or when the time is up, his malice will start to seep back into its full form, and you're gonna have to get off him. And then you're gonna have to rinse and repeat. And also add in some homing missile attacks that Ganon can fire on you when you're on your horse or motorcycle. Because not once, not one time has I ever fought this boss have I felt like I was in any type of danger, or that the planet or the world or Hyrule was in any type of danger. So yeah, the final boss fights of Calamity Ganon and Dark Beast Ganon look like they can talk the talk, but did not walk the walk whatsoever. And honestly, that was my biggest gripe with the original Breath of the Wild. As long as they make Calamity Ganondorf and whatever giant boss fight that they're gonna have in the sequel more adaptive, varied, and made more use of your tools and abilities from that game, then all for it, because I really feel that the boss fights in the original Breath of the Wild, when we're not talking about Master Koga and Maz Koshia, didn't really make use of your abilities. Not to the point that it left an impact on me anyways. Sure, you had to use Magnesis for Thunderblight and the bombs for Fireblight. You could have found an easy way around them for both. And you know, the fact that we didn't get to fight this in the original Breath of the Wild still ticks me off, but maybe, just maybe, Breath of the Wild 2 Calamity Ganondorf can call upon powers of the Calamity and use this as something that fights alongside him, or take this form at certain parts during a boss fight. Channeling these dark energies as he fights you physically. Now he's starting to sound a little bit like Akuma, right? I would like that though. Either way, boss fights are something that I feel Nintendo and the Zelda team should focus on addressing when it comes to the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Because if they do that in Breath of the Wild 2, that's an instant knockout for the original Breath of the Wild when it comes to comparing it to the sequel for me. But I want to know what you guys think about the bosses that you experienced in the original Breath of the Wild, and what ideas and what do you think Nintendo could do with the bosses and Calamity Ganondorf in Breath of the Wild 2. Leave your comments in the comment section below it, and be sure to like, favorite, share, and most importantly subscribe to HMK as I put out Zelda content every week. Big thanks to my Patreon supporters for help making this video happen. So guys, until the next Breath of the Wild 2 video, this has been HMK, and I'll check you guys later.